Yeehaw, Larken Rose here, and I decided to do an impromptu rant about the concept of exploitation. Now, I just thought just came to me, so I'm just going to randomly make it up as I go. I don't actually have notes or a structure or anything. I'm also a scruffy werewolf at the moment, but too bad. If I came up to you and I said, I will give you $1.10 for your house, am I oppressing you? No. Am I doing anything immoral? No. Are you going to take the deal? Probably not. If I came up to you and said, I will give you $1.10 to buy your house, and if you say no, I'll shoot you in the head, is that bad? Yes. That is bad. I realize this is like morality for 4-year-olds. However, so many people, when they talk about the concept of exploitation, already don't understand the things I just said. And from their comfortable position in the U.S., they look at somewhere else where some company, it might even be a U.S. company, is like, oh, it's only paying like $1 a day or whatever the wage is, to these people working really hard. And the immediate question is, well, is violence being used to limit people's other options, or is somebody just coming in and offering them a better option? Because the fact that it wouldn't be a better option for you in the place you live within the, what you're used to, doesn't mean it's not better for them. There are a bunch of people in India or Africa or China or a bunch of places where a really low-paying manual labor job that's difficult, maybe even hazardous, is actually a huge improvement over what they may have otherwise, which is starvation. Now, a lot of the time, that's the fault of government. In fact, I would say these days, in one way or another, starvation is kind of always the fault of government now, because they make it so difficult for anybody else to go help. I mean, the whole "we are the world" thing, the Live Aid or whatever it's called, raised a whole bunch of money, got a bunch of food, and it rotted on the docks because the ruling class of, whatever countries over in Africa that was aimed at didn't let it in, or they stole a bunch, or they sold it, or they, did nasty things with it and hijacked and robbed it. So a lot of the time, these nasty situations that people are in that makes them so desperate is a result of government violence. But if you're not the one making those people's choices be that limited, you're not oppressing them by giving them another option. Not forcing an option on them, but giving them another choice. And this is the thing that commies in particular just never understand. They always do the thing, well, I have to work for you or starve. It's like, when did those become the choices? And I'm not the one who made it so that you require food to survive. I require food to survive too. Nature made it so you require food and shelter and things like that to survive. I didn't. So if I come along and I offer you $1 an hour to do some difficult job, I'm not inflicting anything on you. I'm giving you another option. Might be a crappy option. You might say, no, that's not an improvement. Why would I do that? And that's perfectly fine. And I've talked about this before, how the whole notion that you're somehow oppressing somebody by offering a deal. No, you're not. Even if the deal is horrendously bad, no, you're not. If you're making it so they don't have other options, that's not okay. Again, that's what I started with. Any 5-year-old should be able to understand it. But there's a particular level of arrogance and ignorance and destruction that comes from the American privilege. I hate how that term is used, but I'm going to use it now just to annoy people. Where somebody says, oh, I'm going to boycott this company because did you know they hire people for $1 a day or something down in whatever country on the other side of the world? And I said, well, picture that from the point of view of the people now working for $1 a day on the other side of the world. Unless this company made it so they don't have any other choices, which could be the case, usually by way of government. But unless the company made that be the option, imagine this person who's really poor, and it's like, now you have a job that's relatively easy, a lot easier than what you were doing before. You're literally scrounging for food in the jungle, trying not to starve or something. And this place says, we'll pay you this much, and to you, that's an improvement, as demonstrated by the fact that you took the job. And then you hear, oh, sorry, you're fired. You can't have this job anymore. We're taking away this option because busybody Americans have decided they don't want us offering you that option. So go back to the jungle. Bye. And do you really think those people, oh, I'm so thankful now that I'm not being exploited and oppressed by being given a deal that was better than what I had before? Like, to them, it's an improvement, or they wouldn't take it. Like, the fact that you wouldn't take the deal doesn't mean it's not an improvement for other people. And the thing is, some people understand this and they use it as political leverage. I mean, the unions for ages, like, they basically wanted the violence of the state used to keep their competition out. And so whether it's licensing or this and that and the other thing, or the minimum wage, they used to be pretty open about the fact that we don't want competition. We don't want people who aren't in our union coming along and saying, I'll do roofing or whatever it is, and you don't have to pay me the ridiculous amounts that the unions are demanding. I'll just do it on my own. They'll say, no, we need minimum wage laws because you shouldn't oppress people by paying them that little. Like, let the person decide whether they're willing to work for that little. But leftists have this twisted view that they think that, well, if you make a minimum wage, that'll just raise everybody's wages. No, it'll just get lots of them fired because, you know, when a company's deciding how many people they can hire, if they can hire anybody, and they go, well, we have to pay them this many dollars an hour, and they're not adding that much to our bottom line and what we're selling, and like, it's a loss. That would literally be an act of charity, and that's not what we're in business to do. And if we do that, eventually we go out of business and none of them have any jobs, including us, then of course they're just going to say, no, you're fired. So this idea that government violence protects people from being exploited, when in almost every case, the only immoral kind of exploitation happens by way of government violence. Because there are a bunch of instances where those companies go to other countries and they make a deal with the ruling class over there and say, hey, we'll hire your people for hardly anything. We'll pay them hardly anything in these crappy conditions. And you just make sure they don't have other options and make sure, like, you tax or regulate our competition out of business. When they do that, that's nasty. And you can call that enslavement. You can call that trapping people and robbing people and all sorts of things, because it's using violence to limit people's options. But if all you're doing is adding an option, even if the option sucks, that's not immoral. And the thing is, the people who whine about this don't give anybody jobs. It's sort of like the arrogance and the hypocrisy of saying, I'm outraged that company is offering people work down there, but only for $1 a day. It's like, okay, what are you offering those people? Oh, nothing. You're offering them nothing. No trade, no deal, no work at all. But you're here being all self-righteous, bitching about the fact that someone else is offering them something that isn't as good as you wish they were offering them. Well, then go offer your own money. Go open your own business. Go hire them for twice as much and whatever you want to do, and be charitable or nice or whatever you want to do to your employees. You know, whatever you want to give them, go do it. But when you're all the way offering them nothing, it's the equivalent of somebody, you know, so there's some homeless guy in the street and somebody else comes by and gives him $1. Somebody goes, oh, you only gave him $1. Well, what did you give him? Nothing. Well, then shut up. $1 is better than nothing, whether it's just giving it to somebody or paying somebody to do a job, offering somebody a trade. So this notion of exploitation is ironically enough, exploited by collectivists and statists to cheer for government violence and aggression, which is the one thing that actually keeps people in starvation and gets in the way of people helping, whether it's by way of just charity, like, well, let's ship a bunch of food to this place that's having, you know, it's having a drought, having a famine and whatever, let's just ship a bunch of food down there. And they do that now, and the government of wherever it is gets in the way and stops it, and people keep starving to death. And they go, oh, so it isn't just because they didn't have food, it's because there's somebody keeping them from having food. That's not okay. That's violence. That's immoral. And that's government. And so when people claim about offering a free trade and call that exploitation, they're just totally misguided, and they're totally hypocritical because they're not offering anything. And the commies do this constantly of like, you're only offering to pay people, yada, yada, yada. And if I don't work for you, I starve. Well, then you should probably be thanking me for saving your life. What about the guy right next to me who isn't offering you any job? He's just there. He's not oppressing you because he isn't doing anything. He isn't offering you any choices. He isn't offering you any trade, any deal whatsoever. And that's perfectly fine. That doesn't count as mean. Somehow, you're not entitled to his money, but the moment somebody says, I might want to hire somebody to do something, suddenly the entitlement mentality children who believe in communism think that they're entitled to your money because you decided to hire somebody to do something. And the entire concept of the means of production is exactly that. It's like, well, as soon as you're able to produce something, we get to steal it. It's like, just because I got to the point I'm capable of being productive, you get to steal it? And to pretend that's a philosophy and pretend it's, based on some moral principle is just ridiculous. Now, there are situations in which I would, if you're exploiting somebody's situation where you have nothing to do with making their situation, but their situation is really bad, and you offer them a pretty dang bad deal that they need to take because it's their best option, there are times at which I think, well, you could have been less of a butthead than that, but if it's with your property, you get to decide what's done with your property. And so the people, for example, like when there's a flood or some disaster happens, and then people drive to the area and they sell generators. They do price gouging. They sell generators for like twice what they normally sell them for. People are like, oh, that's horrible. That's despicable. You're price gouging. That's so selfish of you. How many generators did you take to them? Oh, 0. None. You gave nobody any chance to do anything better than the situation they were in after their house floated away. You gave them nothing. You just complained about the fact that someone else gave them a deal that you don't think was fair in one way or another. Guess what? The worst price gougers in the world still did more than you did for the most desperate people, because at least they gave them another option, even if it was a crummy option, even if it was taking advantage of somebody's desperation or whatever else. But the funny thing about that is that is how everyone functions anyway. They just, the political left like to imagine that only applies to the, evil business people selling stuff. When you take your money to a store, are you trying to spend as much as possible to get as little as possible for yourself? I'm guessing no. You're trying to get as much as you can for you, giving as little as you can to them. That's what everybody does. And there's nothing evil about that if you're not like robbing somebody or introducing violence. That's just what's expected. And the thing is, when people whine about the whole exploitation, whether it's here or overseas or anywhere else, you're only paying your workers blah, blah, blah an hour, and I think that's despicable. Meanwhile, I don't have any workers. I don't offer anybody any employment at all. I don't offer anybody a deal, but I'm just going to complain about other people offering a deal that I somehow think should be more generous while I'm offering them nothing. And then I go to the store and I go, these prices are outrageous. I'm going to buy this cheap thing. Well, guess who makes the cheap thing? The people who do a good job of finding labor that's as inexpensive as possible, even if it means going to India or something. They are able to make it that cheap because of other people who are in a position to do the work for a bunch less than like American union workers or something. You benefit from it. And this is the punchline I wanted to get to. The fact that this notion of exploitation and taking advantage of situations, like, it's basically the most moral helpful thing to the people who are worst off in the world. And again, I'm not talking about when it uses government violence to limit people's choices and then traps them into having to use a certain thing. Because if you're, never mind the map. Imagine there's two people standing right next to each other. And you say, I need somebody to mow my lawn. And I'll pay somebody $20 to mow my lawn. It's not that big a lawn. And you say, oh, I'll do it for $20. And the guy next to you says, I'll do it for 10. Now, who benefits and who loses if I say, well, guy who will do it for 10, you got the job? The guy who would do it for 10 benefits, or he wouldn't have done it. He got $10. The one guy who lost out is the guy who would have done it for 20. Because, well, you didn't get a deal. You can go try to make that deal with somebody else, but you didn't get it from me. I benefited. I saved $10. But if you want to help the most downtrodden poor people in the world, putting these government limitations on trade and things like the minimum wage is the nastiest thing you can do, which, by the way, it's why the unions have always cheered for that stuff, because it keeps the competition out. Heck with those people. We want to keep our artificially inflated wage or union wages by using government violence to stomp out the competition. But if you actually care about the poor and the downtrodden, you should be thrilled to death when somebody on the other side of the world gets the job instead of American. So people have this schizo thing that we should buy American and support things here, and oh, it's so mean what you're doing to them over there. Like, give the beauty of the market is that it naturally gives the job to the lowest bidder. And by the way, you do that in your life constantly. You are the lowest bidder when you go to the store and say, I'm not going to buy that thing, I'm going to buy this thing. Or when you buy a car, or when you buy whatever, you're trying to get the most you possibly can for your money, and you'll low bid, and you'll negotiate, or you'll do whatever. Or if it's just a set price, you'll just decide when to buy things and when not to buy things. And the thing is, when everybody does that, the people in the worst situation who are making more desperate deals get saved by the fact that people want the desperate deals. Because, wow, you'll sell that for that, whether it's your labor or something else. Okay, I'll buy that because it's a better deal for me. And it helps out the underdog. It helps out the people who are, on the lowest rungs of the ladder by not getting in the way, by not forcibly interfering. And to call that exploitation, like, would I be exploiting the person who said, I'll mow your lawn for $10? Well, he wants to. He offered it, and it's a voluntary deal. And if you compare that to the guy who wants $20, or somebody who's saying, like, we're in a union and we make $70 an hour and you're trying to hire Mexicans for $5 an hour. Well, the only people who lose out are the people who can't compete. The only people who lose out if you actually hire the Mexicans, if they're capable of doing the job and everything, are the people who can't compete. Why would you be entitled to get paid more for a job that you don't do any better than somebody who would charge way less? It's this weird elitist entitlement mentality disguised as compassion for the poor, when it's nothing of the kind. It's not compassionate to say we should make sure nobody ever offers those people a job. Because if you're a company over here and you look at, all right, there's not a whole lot of skilled workers over there, but we may be able to make a factory that makes shoes, Nike or something, may be able to do something and pay them a little bit and improve, that improves their life, or they wouldn't take the deal, and generate something that's still worth it to, like, ship our factory over there and ship all the shoes overseas and sell them here to customers who want to pay less. And it benefits the customers, and it benefits the people who just got a job in a better situation, and it benefits the company. The only people it doesn't benefit is the people who are bidding too high. Why are people who bid too high magically entitled to something? They're not. That's not how the market works, and it's not how morality works. If there's, 4 people offering to do a job for a certain amount, and you have the lowest bid, does that somehow make it bad for them to take your low bid? No. Does it somehow mean they're exploiting you and doing something evil to you if they accept your bid? Of course not. And is it somehow morally superior for them to go take the highest bid, to waste the most of their money, get the same amount of productivity done, but waste more of their money and then increase their prices? So everybody pays more for it. That guy got paid more for doing the same amount of work. Productivity didn't go up, and the one who needed it most desperately didn't get it. How is that an advantage? How is that better? And it's not, but so many people think in terms of collectivist garbage that they don't even understand what they're doing. They don't even understand, like, the individual perspective of, somebody in one of those poor countries thinking, well, I got one of those jobs where I can be on an assembly line and make $1 for working this many hours, which to them is an improvement. And again, of course, I know there are lots of situations in which government violence is limiting There are options in which government like claims all the land and then says you have to pay us rent for living on the land that you lived on for the last 20,000 years or something. That's bogus. That's immoral. That's a different equation. That's a different story. But if somebody's coming in just offering them a new option, that helps them. And by the way, it helps them more than all the government and all the compassion in the world does, to give them an option to start, to get on the bottom rungs of the ladder so that they can do stuff. And then they learn a skill. And then they're able to, like, now I can do it faster. Now I can do it better. And now I can say, I want to get paid more because I'm faster than the guy right next to me who you haven't trained yet and he doesn't know how to do it yet. I think I should get paid more because I'm more productive. And for the last thing I want to mention, then I might go into comments, but that might just go forever and ever, is that productivity is what creates wealth. Money moving around in circles doesn't. I've talked about this before. Like if everybody thinks, well, it's how much you get paid. All right, let's do this. Form a huge circle around the whole world, just a line of people, a circle around the whole world, and everybody hand $1,000 to the guy right next to you. And it's okay because you're going to get it back from the guy on the other side of you. Yay, look at all this money flow. Look at all this commerce. Look at all this trade. Look at all this income. Did it do anything? Nope. Everyone is exactly in the position they were before it happened. Productivity, creating stuff that people want, is how you make a prosperous and wealthy nation or individual or whatever. And the thing that rewards productivity is not give as much money as possible to pay the guy who's going to cost the most. That doesn't help. Like, he's not going to be any more productive than the Mexican who just snuck across the border to work on a landscaping crew or something. He'll be really hardworking and productive. He is enriching everybody. The guy who's sitting on his butt and demanding union wages and doing less, he may get a bigger paycheck. He is doing less to contribute to the overall wealth of society. So a natural thing the market does is reward people for being productive and enriching the world. First of all, enriching themselves, but also enriching the people they work for and everything else. And while government does the exact opposite. It does everything to minimize productivity and rob productivity and then pay people to not be productive and then pay a bunch of people to be violent thugs instead of producing anything of value. So there's so much about the situation that people just don't think about, and they can just do the thing of, well, they can do the virtue signaling routine of, I'm all morally superior because I object to the fact that they only pay that much or they hire children or something, and just totally ignoring the fact that for a bunch of people that's an improvement, and a big improvement over what their lives would have been. And you sending them back to starving in the streets isn't really helping them. It's not really a way to be compassionate. It's a way to feel better about yourself while cheering for violence and making the world worse for absolutely everybody. Because you're making the people in the worst position suffer more, sometimes literally starve to death. You're making prices higher for everybody else. Like, the only people that actually benefits is that tiny little individual people who get a better deal than they should have because they couldn't actually compete. And they were overbidding, but they used the violence of government to get what they wanted. And by the way, that is exactly what you should complain about when it comes to exploitation, is government violence being used to give an unfair advantage. That is exactly what minimum wage laws are. That is exactly what unions want, is the use of government to give them an advantage over the Mexicans or people over in the Philippines or India or whatever. No, we're going to pretend it's compassionate when we use government violence to give ourselves an advantage to the detriment of other people. And the thing that levels the playing field and picks up the poor faster than anything is an actually free market, which we don't nearly have in the US, we don't nearly have it around the world. But an actual free society where people can trade with whomever they want, that is what has the best potential to lift up everybody and help the most downtrodden. Whereas the fake compassion of collectivism and statism is what has literally led to tens of millions of people starving to death. So if you want to feel good about yourself while contributing to people literally starving to death, then keep cheering for collectivist policies to make things fair. And if you actually care about the prosperity and freedom and the future of actual humanity, stop advocating government at all. Stop condoning government violence, even in the name of fairness and compassion and yada, yada, yada. Get out of the way. And better yet, go form a company. Go hire somebody. Go find a way to trade. Don't just sit around complaining at the people who do that because you think they should be giving a better deal when you're giving no deal to anyone, anywhere, ever. The end. I will... I hope it wasn't too glitchy. I see a comment. I may quick scroll and respond to a couple stuff. There's a million comments. Respond to them all. I'm just going to book through. I may just like comment in the comment section by text because I'm sure this is going to go in 1,000. David Landsteiner says, not everybody has a skill set to be a business owner. Absolutely true. Or the motivation. And I know that when Tessa and I ran a medical transcription business and we tried to give it away and nobody wanted it because they didn't want the responsibility and complications of actually running the thing. They liked being a typist because that's way easier and way simpler and way less responsibility. And so a lot of the people who talk about, oh, I'm so oppressed by my employer, if they were put in charge, the business would crash and burn in a day. They have that child mindset of something happens and they get rich, which doesn't happen either. But they imagine something happens and they get rich, and that's unfair because we're doing all the work. Okay, then go make a business of your own. I don't know how to do that. Well, yeah, maybe there's things you don't understand and can't do yourself. And so maybe you should be grateful for a pretty dang simple situation. I was just talking to somebody about the fact that a free market and a capitalist society, real capitalism, not this crony capitalist fascist corporate nightmare we have now, it actually enables very uneducated, unskilled people to have a very easy way to have a very comfy standard of life without knowing or being able to do much of anything. Because somebody can have a business and have equipment and have a plan and say, all you have to do is this. We go to this thing, you ride this lawnmower around on their lawn, you drive it back on the truck, and you go to the next one. You don't have to know how to build the thing. You don't have to buy the thing. You don't have to know how to maintain it. We have a different guy who's a mechanic. All you have to do is drive around in circles. Anybody can do that. And I know because I've done that, and I've made money doing that about 1 million years ago. But I've done that, and I understand this is a great situation. I'm making money using things that other people invented and built and designed, and I didn't have to do anything except just the manual part. So little thought, so little effort. It's physical effort, but whoopee-doo. And so it's actually freedom that enables the uneducated, you can even say stupid people, like the people whose IQ is really dang low, can be really productive and have a really easy life in a free society where other people make it such that they can do almost nothing, and it's still worth, because it's manual labor, it's still worth enough that they can have a comfortable life, as demonstrated by the poor in America being mostly overweight, and most of them have cars, and they all have TVs, and I'd say I almost count, I think, except for maybe where I live, but I don't own it, I rent it. But so the thing that benefits everybody, including the most disadvantaged, is a free society, which again, we don't have. But people like to just imagine that, those mean CEOs are just sitting around cackling, counting their money. And at some companies, the owners all the way aren't doing anything, and they're just, they got it and they bought it and whatever. But a lot of times the people who ran it, worked their butts off. That was totally true of Tessa and I. We worked less than minimum wage, making the business, working our butts off, 16 hours a day, trying to get the thing up and running, and finally did. And then we made it be a thing that we could hire other typists to work at from their own home. We would even set them up and show. I made custom programming so they didn't even have to really know how to use words. Very simple setup. Just do this and this and this. And they're like, oh, cool, I can do that. And we trained, I don't know how many it was, probably a dozen in total. people to work for us really easily who wouldn't know how and wouldn't be able to and wouldn't want to even try to run the business themselves. But there's this weird mentality that collectivists often have, that somehow they're being exploited because they were offered a deal where they do almost nothing and they get some money, enough to live on. And so it's this weird entitlement mentality. Chris Chandler asks, do you think voluntarism is still growing? Did he hit a ceiling? It's absolutely growing. It's growing all over the place. And unfortunately, the things like the alt-right stupidity, it was loud enough that it gave people the false impression that, like, a whole bunch of voluntarists have gone. No, it was a few loud racist idiots went in that direction because they got scared and then they went crying to Big Daddy government. Most of the voluntarists who were here before were still voluntarists, and there's even more than before that happened because it's still spreading. Oh, somebody mentioning an Obama speech. I might have to check that out with a barf bag handy. All right, maybe I'll just cut this off and all right, yeah, I should just go into there's a million comments, so I should just go into the comments and just text response to stuff. But then I have to see if I can figure out how to download this thing, minus this rambling incoherent part, and stick it on DTube. So that's all for now. I will see you in the comments section.